We're going to call the meeting to order. If everybody could please rise and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. If everybody could just look into your packets and take a quick look at the minutes. Last month was just the borough budget consultation, so we really didn't have too much main business, so hopefully there should be no corrections to the minutes. If I can just entertain a motion to accept. Okay, Nikki first, can I have Dana second? Okay, we have no correspondence. We will move right along to our presentation. We have the New York City Campaign Finance Board here to discuss their New York City Votes campaign. So the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Do you need to speak into the microphone or anything?
I think it should be able to pick up.
Just checking. Hi everyone, and thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Amanda Melillo. I'm the Public Affairs Officer of the New York City Campaign Finance Board. I'm joined by Sean O'Leary, he's our field coordinator. And we're here representing NYC Votes, which is our voter engagement arm. And we do a number of things under this umbrella where we provide voters with information, including the voter guide for municipal elections. We conduct voter registration out in the community, and we also, within the past couple of years, have started Get Out the Vote efforts to try to encourage people to get to the polls. The reason we are here today is to talk to you about a campaign we're working on with a number of other groups called Vote Better New York. The past couple of years, we took citizen volunteers up to Albany in an effort to deepen people's engagement. We know in New York, we have particularly low voter turnout rates, and we undertook this effort to sort of like get people involved beyond the polls. So we would bus them up to Albany where they would meet with their legislators, and these were everyday citizen volunteers who took time off work or off school, and they talked about problems they had encountered in the polls, problems with voter registration, or if they couldn't make it, if they wanted to go vote, and it was an opportunity for them to advocate for voting reforms. This year we have expanded our efforts. We're bringing new groups in all the time. We're also beginning to work with groups from around the state, because one of the things we encounter when we go up to Albany is we often hear, oh, these issues are really a New York City concern. But what we have found is that the problem of low voter turnout and engagement is a problem around the state. So we took a look at some of the numbers. So first off, New York is 46th in the nation for voter turnout. Only around 25% of registered voters here voted in the 2014 elections. But if you look at the fact that we have nearly 1 million citizens who are not registered to vote, that turnout number was really closer to around 20%. Only 1 in 5 people are choosing their own government at the state level and the city level as well. We know from our work that we are at these community drives and registration events, and people ask us all the time why registration is challenging. A lot of people don't understand why we're still doing this on pen and paper, and we encounter a lot of problems that this actually causes for people when they get to the polls. The Board of Elections staff, they are taking these voter registration forms and hand entering them, and we've just seen firsthand from our voters that this can cause a lot of issues. Forms go missing, or they're not entered in time, or people's registrations are entered with typos, so they go to the polls and find that their names are not in the poll books. And these are people who they thought they registered properly. We check their forms to make sure they registered properly, and they're still encountering a lot of difficulties. And another problem that we face is that, we, making these GOTV calls, find that people, even in elections like 2015, where here in Staten Island you had, some really important races, but for most of the city, they did not have a really high excitement election. It was mostly judicial races where people didn't actually have a choice in candidates. It was one of those pick 3 out of 3 situations. But we still found people who really wanted to go to vote and they couldn't make it to the polls because they found out they had to work a double shift and they couldn't get time off of work, and they didn't know far enough in advance to request an absentee ballot. So we took a look at this situation and we came up with 3 goals for our campaign. We want to make sure that everyone can get registered to vote who wants to be registered, that everyone has more than one day to get to the polls, and that everyone can cast a ballot that counts. So we are going up there to support 3 pieces of legislation, and I'll talk about those briefly before turning it over to Sean. The first thing we are supporting is the Voter Empowerment Act, which would really be an upgrade to our voter registration system. Right now, if you're a DMV customer, you can register to vote fairly easily. You can do so right at the agency, and they electronically transmit your information to the State Board of Elections, or you can register online if you set up a DMV account online. For a lot of people who are not DMV customers and interact with the government in other ways, they sort of miss out on these opportunities. So this bill would expand those systems to other agencies that already have to provide voter registration opportunities. We're talking about the Department of Labor, the State Department of Veterans Affairs, or CUNY and SUNY, could be registering students when they're signing up for class. And we can do this easily by electronically transmitting this information. And we really cut down on a lot of the errors that we see in the voter rolls. This would keep them more up to date when people move, their addresses would be more easily updated. And it would expand online registration opportunities so that people would be able to register to vote with a social security number just like they can on pen and paper forms right now. The second piece of legislation we are supporting when we go up there is early voting. The governor has been very supportive, and there is a bill in the Assembly and Senate right now that would create a 12-day early voting period. And it would require 1 polling location per 50,000 registered voters so that it really takes a look at the population size and what the needs for each place are and tries to accommodate those. And it would ensure that voters who are maybe working a double shift on Tuesday could go cast their ballot on Saturday, like they can in almost every other state in the country right now. And third, we are supporting the Voter-Friendly Ballot Act. As I'm sure many of you know, we switched to the new optical scanner machines in 2010, and we're still voting on ballots designed for old lever machines. And what happens is, this leads to a lot of errors in voting because the ballots are designed in a confusing way for the machines that we vote on now. Some people have very strong memories of font size being as small as 7-point font that no one could read. What the Voter-Friendly Ballot Act would do is set clear design standards that usability professionals have agreed on to ensure that we can't have font size smaller than 12 points on the ballot. The ballot sort of decluttered and laid out in a more user-friendly way. Because we know right now that thousands of votes are thrown away every election cycle because people overvote or double vote just because of bad design. And this is something that's easily preventable, and the Assembly has passed it year after year, and we're hoping that the Senate will this year. So that is what we are taking our citizen volunteers up to Albany to talk to their legislators about on May 3rd, and now I will turn it to Sean.
Hello everyone, thank you for having us here today. Give you a quick history of Voter Day. In 2014, NYC Votes started bringing volunteers to Albany. The first year was 50 people. They went up to Albany last year, 2015. They brought up over 100 people, and they had over 30 meetings with legislative officials so these citizen advocates could share their experiences and their stories. I think what is important, this is a day about the citizens, not about lobbyists or lawyers going up there and making a pitch, but just citizens, average people to saying, this is why we need these laws. So this year, we were taking from New York City, probably about 250, and from New York State, the rest of the state, probably about 100, 150, possibly 200, to go to Albany. There'll be a press rally when we first get there, and then we'll break into groups and meet with the elected officials so these citizen advocates can share their story. We've also been, some of you may be aware, maybe not, holding in district meetings with elected officials of the state and Senate, mostly on the election commission, to talk and advocate for these things. We've also started an online petition and a hard copy petition, again going around the state. We've collected several thousand signatures already advocating for this legislation that Amanda has mentioned. We've had presentations at Syracuse University and at University of Albany SUNY. So this is a growing movement. We've Today we were at the Bronx talking about this movement. A couple of weeks ago, we were in Brooklyn, so we are out there. We're out there. There have been letters. We want, support from legislators. And so why we're here is we're asking, one, you take this message back to your communities. If they can, we'd love to have volunteers from Staten Island and from different community boards join us in Albany to actually get on the bus. If this cannot be done, then sign our petition. I have hard copies with me today, or the petition is at change.org. That would be great. Please call your elected officials. They can, citizens or residents, tell them. Say, this is what we would like to see. We'd like to see this change. This isn't just, something that, let's put it this way, there's 4 elections this year. This is something that residents will have to deal with. Voters will have to go to the polls 4 times this year. It would be better if we can update that experience, improve that experience. So we're asking for that. Or simply write a letter to your local paper. Just somehow get word out. We're looking for support. The more people, who reach out to their elected officials, to the committee members, to the community boards, the more support we will have. This is an ongoing crisis. The man gave the numbers, we're 46 for a progressive state. To be 46 in the nation and voter turnout is a sad state of affairs. And it is requiring an easy fix. And it doesn't hurt any party or help any party. It helps the general citizens. When you have people having their votes thrown away, that's just a sad state of affairs. And that's pretty much my pitch.
I have a question now.
Please.
Why, can we go progress a little further? Why is there even paper involved at all? Registering, voting, is it possible, we could do everything online, banking? Why isn't voting can be done online? Why, and then we'll have 100% time?
There was a comment by one of our interns who said it's easier to order pizza online than it is to register to vote.
I mean, I will say in terms of voting online, I could easily see us moving towards that in the future. I know right now, election technologists sort of feel like the technology isn't there. There are places like in Canada, for example, they do online voting, but there actually aren't clear standards right now, and each election board's online voting system looks a little different. So I think we'd want to make sure that the security standards are in place. But you're absolutely right, especially in terms of registration, because we find this all the time. I mean, people, they have smartphones or they have tablet devices. They're on the internet all the time. And other states are experimenting with ways where you can register through your smartphone. And, New York can be a leader in this. I think we're a great state. We are out in front of a lot of things, but elections are one area where we're falling behind. And the majority of people in the state still register to vote on paper. I moved between boroughs a year and a half ago, and I was not a DMV customer at the time, and I had to fill out a paper form and send it in. And to me, where I do everything online, this was very strange. So we know people want just a more usable experience, and they want something where they feel a little more secure. You maybe saw there was an article in Gothamist today about a number of people are finding they're having registration problems before the primary. They're finding that the party that, the Board of Elections lookup tool says that they're registered under isn't what they remember registering under, or their registrations are essentially going missing. They can't find themselves in the lookup tool. And these are problems that could really be solved or avoided if we brought things more online, because we're still really relying on staff to hand enter all of these forms, and every election cycle, and you can see it in terms of when registration forms are actually entered into the voter rolls. There's just this huge spike before every election, so it puts an incredible strain on staff. And we know they got a number of forms right before the deadline to register for the primaries, and their staff was working through the weekend. And it opens up this whole field of human error. And it would be so much easier if we registered to vote, or if online, or if we've moved or found out we had a problem with our voting records or something like that, we could just go online and correct it. A lot of states have online update tools, even if states without full online registration have online update tools, and it's something we can do.
You mentioned early voting. I know Florida has early voting. It seems to be very successful, particularly for seniors and others that find it difficult to get out, that they have a window of a few days. Is that being considered?
Yeah, so the bill that we're supporting would have a 12-day early voting window, so it would include 2 weekends before the election. Again, like, I think it's now 37 other states have some form of early voting, whether that's, there are a couple all-male states, but most states have early in-person voting. And in those states, the election administrators love early voting. You know, there are a lot of implementation concerns we've heard in New York, but if our election officials were talking to election officials in other states, I think maybe some of those concerns would be resolved. Because what they find in other states is it makes election day a little bit easier. I'm sure many of you have had an experience where you've gone to the polls and there was some sort of meltdown. There was like a really long line, or machines weren't working, or something like that. So in other states where they have early voting windows, it just gives them a troubleshooting period where they can sort of identify and correct these issues in advance. People have a choice to go to the polls when it's convenient for them. They don't have to figure out when they can fit it in on just one Tuesday, which tends to make them a lot happier with the experience, by the way. You know, if you can choose a time that's convenient for you, you might be happier to stand in line than if you have to rush to work or pick up your kids at school or something like that. So really, as I've heard election officials in other states say, early voters are happy voters. People are much happier with their election process. And a lot of these problems are corrected, and it really cuts down on these long lines at the polls on election day.
Anybody else? Any other questions? All right, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, move right along. Does anybody have any old business to bring up? Any new business? All right, motion to adjourn. Dan first, Dana second. All right, meeting is adjourned.